Imagine this. A real city exists on Earth. With streets, buildings, offices, guards, and daily life. But you are not allowed to enter. Not as a tourist. Not as a journalist. Not as a YouTuber. Not even as a citizen of the same country. You can see it on maps. You can find its coordinates. You can even find photos taken from far away. But once you try to get close, everything changes. Because this is not an ordinary city. This is one of the most restricted places on Earth. A city where secrecy is not a choice. It's the law. The rules around this city are so strict that even saying its name can create problems for people who live nearby. There are checkpoints, security zones, restricted airspace, and in some cases, even the workers inside are not allowed to tell their own families what they do. Think about that. A person can leave the house in the morning, go to work in a city, and return home at night, and still be unable to explain what happened inside. No photos. No social media. No casual conversations. Because in this city, information is treated like a weapon. Now the question is obvious. Why does a city like this exist? The answer is simple and terrifying. This city was not built for tourism. It was not built for business. It was not built for culture. It was built for something that changed human history forever. This city exists because of nuclear technology, weapons research, secret laboratories, and national survival. During the Cold War, governments realized something. The most important battles were not fought with armies. They were fought with scientists. And to protect those scientists and hide their work, entire cities were created in secret. Not bases. Not buildings. Cities. One of the most famous examples is in Russia. A place once known only by a code name. For decades, it didn't officially exist. On maps, it was blank. In records, it was hidden. And if you asked about it, people would say, "There is nothing there." But the city was real. It had apartments, schools, hospitals, parks, and thousands of residents. Yet outsiders could not enter. And the residents could not freely leave. It was a city built like a cage, but decorated like a normal life. And that is where the real mystery begins. Because this city was not only restricted, it was dangerous. The first thing that makes these cities so strange is how they were named. They didn't have normal names. Instead, they were given code identities like a nearby big city name, plus a number. For example, Chelyabinsk 65, or Arzamas 16. To outsiders, it sounded like a boring postal zone. But in reality, those numbers hid some of the most sensitive locations on Earth. Even mail worked differently. Letters were redirected through other cities. Officially, the secret city was somewhere else. And for decades, millions of people lived like this. Inside a city that was hidden from the world. Now here's what makes this story even more shocking. Life inside these restricted cities was not always miserable. In fact, many people inside lived better than average citizens. The government often provided better housing, better schools, better medical care, higher salaries, cleaner streets. Why? Because these cities were built for elite scientists and workers. And the government needed them loyal. So the deal was simple. You get a good life. But you give up freedom. No travel without permission. No visitors without approval. No speaking about work. And from childhood, people were trained to accept secrecy as normal. Imagine growing up in a city where you learn. Don't ask questions. Don't talk outside. Don't trust strangers. That kind of life changes a person. It creates a population that feels safe, but also trapped. Now we reach the dark part. These cities were not restricted just because of spies. They were restricted because of what was being produced inside. Plutonium, uranium, nuclear weapons material, radioactive waste. And here's the problem. In the early years, the world didn't understand how to handle nuclear waste safely. They were learning while doing. And the pressure was extreme. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union was racing against the United States. they wanted nuclear weapons fast. So safety was often ignored. Waste was dumped into rivers, stored in weak containers, buried quickly. And the city kept growing. More workers, more reactors, more production, more radiation. But nobody outside was allowed to know. Because admitting danger would mean admitting weakness. Then came a disaster so severe that many experts call it the third worst nuclear accident in history. It happened in 1957, near a secret city linked to a nuclear facility. A storage tank filled with radioactive waste exploded. Not like a nuclear bomb, but a chemical explosion that blasted radioactive material into the atmosphere. The contamination spread across a massive region. Thousands of people were affected. Villages were evacuated. Some were erased from maps. And yet, the world barely heard about it. Why? Because it happened in a restricted zone. The Soviet government kept it secret. For years, people living nearby didn't even know what they were exposed to. Doctors were told not to talk. Records disappeared. And families were left with mysterious illnesses, with no explanation. This was not just a nuclear accident. It was a nuclear accident inside a city that officially did not exist. So how can a city exist and still remain hidden? It sounds impossible in the age of Google Maps. But restricted cities survive because they use layers of protection. Fences inside fences. Checkpoints with armed guards. ID verification systems. Restricted phone networks. Surveillance. And strict laws. In many places, the restricted zone begins long before you reach the city. You might drive for hours and think you're still on a normal road. And suddenly a gate appears. No warning. No signs. Just a guard post and a barrier. And if your name is not on the approved list, you don't go forward. Now here's what many people don't realize. Trying to enter one of these cities is not like trying to enter a museum after closing time. It can be treated as espionage, trespassing in a military zone, a national security threat. And in some countries, that can mean arrest, interrogation, imprisonment. Even taking photos near the perimeter can bring trouble. In some cases, locals living nearby know one simple rule: never point a camera at the fence. Because these places are not just protected physically, they are protected legally. Many people think secret cities are only Cold War history. But restricted cities still exist today. Some are nuclear related. Some are connected to missile research, chemical weapons disposal, military drone programs, advanced technology labs, cybersecurity and surveillance. And some are connected to something even more modern: space programs. Yes. Even space research facilities in certain countries are so restricted that outsiders can't even get close. And now in the 21st century, secrecy has evolved. Because today, secrecy is not only about fences. It's also about digital isolation, controlled internet, no public records, hidden corporate structures. A city can now be hidden through paperwork as much as through walls. But the most chilling detail is not the fences. It's the psychology. People who live inside these cities often develop a strange relationship with the outside world. Some feel proud. They believe they are protecting their country. Some feel safe, because crime is low and everything is controlled. But others feel something darker. A feeling that their life is being watched. A feeling that their future is already chosen. And here's the most disturbing part. Children born inside these cities often grow up and work inside them too. Not always because they want to, but because the system pushes them into it. So the restricted city becomes like a world of its own. A society inside a fence. A nation inside a nation. And that leads to the final question. What is the real purpose of the most restricted city on Earth? And what does it reveal about humanity? By now, you might think the most restricted city on Earth exists because of power. And yes, that's part of it. But the deeper reason is something even more human. Fear. Governments fear. Invasion. Sabotage. Spying. Collapse. And losing control. And when fear becomes powerful enough, a government doesn't just build a wall. It builds an entire world behind the wall. A city where secrets are protected like treasure. Where science becomes a weapon. And where information is treated like a dangerous substance. Because in modern history, one truth has repeated again and again. The countries that control technology control the future. But here is the moral question. These cities often provide stable jobs, clean streets, strong schools, better healthcare, low crime. So in one way, they look like a perfect society. But the price is always the same. Freedom. You can't enter freely. You can't leave freely. You can't speak freely. And this creates a disturbing thought. What if the most restricted city on Earth is not only a security project, but a social experiment? A place where a government tests a simple idea. How much freedom will people trade for safety? And history shows many people will trade a lot. The biggest lesson is not nuclear technology. It is not secret weapons. It is not even Cold War history. The biggest lesson is secrecy can protect a nation, but it can also hide disasters. When a city is closed, two things happen. 1. Real threats become harder for enemies. 2. Real mistakes become easier to cover up. And that is why restricted cities are so dangerous. Not because they exist, but because what happens inside them can remain hidden for decades. Like nuclear waste leaks. Like radiation exposure. Like accidents. And the victims may never get justice. Because officially, the city was never there. So what is the most restricted city on Earth? It could be one of many. A closed nuclear city. A secret weapons city. A surveillance city. A military research city. But the real point is this. The city is not the mystery. The city is a mirror. It reflects the part of humanity that is always fighting between knowledge and fear. Security and freedom. Progress and control. And as technology becomes more powerful, more restricted cities will exist. Maybe not always behind fences. Sometimes behind laws. Sometimes behind invisible digital walls. Because the future will not only be built by people. It will be built by secrets. And the most restricted city on Earth proves one final truth. The most guarded places on Earth are not protecting gold. They are protecting information.
Subscribe Info Beyond Borders now for more mind-blowing knowledge.